In this screencast, we're going to do a quick, hopefully less than 5-minute introduction to sculpting meshes. The first thing to know about sculpting meshes is that just as in vertex painting, the more detailed our mesh is, the more detailed our sculpting will potentially be. Right now we start off with a basic cube. I'm going to switch to edit mode, and I'm going to hit W and subdivide multi. I'm going to cut this cube up into, say, 16 cuts, which should give me a fairly finely divided cube right here. At 16 cuts in each direction, all the way around the cube. So now I have 16 squared vertices on each side. That should give me something to work with. At this point, with the cube selected, I'm going to switch to sculpt mode. And in sculpting mode, I have this paintbrush. To see what my options are for the paintbrush, I'm going to type N to bring up the details palette, as I did in vertex painting. And the default tool is a drawing tool, and what this does is basically I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller here, and I can paint onto my mesh. And what the drawing tool is actually doing, if we spin around and look at this from the side, is we see that it is very lightly pulling these, where I'm painting, out of the mesh. You can see that bump now on the side. I can actually adjust the strength of this. I could have it really yank them out. I would bring it up to strength 100. And the more I do this, the more dramatic the effect is. The other tools are similarly self-evident. Flatten will do exactly what it says. It'll flatten everything back down to the same level. It'll try and smooth everything out. Smooth, if I apply it to, say, a corner, will try to smooth the corners into nice curves. Pinch will try to bring the vertices underneath the brush together. You can see them getting closer and closer right there. Inflate will do the opposite. It will blow them apart, move them further and further apart. Grab allows me to simply grab a bunch of vertices and pull them in a particular direction. This is like stretching silly putty. Layer would actually be bringing this works like draw, but brings all of the vertices up to the top layer. And again, flatten, which moves everything back down to the same layer. So these are all in paired, except for grab, draw and smooth, pinch and inflate, layer and flatten. If we turn on the airbrush, this means that as I'm going to use the draw tool for this. If I turn on the airbrush option for this, it means that as I paint back and forth over a particular area, I'll have more and more impact the more passes I make over it on a single click. Additionally, for some of these, draw, smooth, draw and pinch and inflate, I can choose between adding and subtracting. Adding is going to pull things out of an object. Subtracting is going to push them back in. So for example, if I were to inflate with a subtraction, while the pixels are apparently moving apart from each other underneath my brush, if I spin around my object, I see that I've pushed them in rather than pulled them out of my shape. I can also, if I'm feeling particularly daring, turn on symmetry. So for example, I see down here that I am looking at the X and Z axis, so X is side to side. I'm going to have X symmetry turned on, and I'm going to draw, and you see that I am mirrored side to side as I do my drawing along the X-axis. I can switch that to Z-axis, and it would mirror me top to bottom, or the Y-axis, which would be hard to see in this scenario, but would be mirroring me front to back. So in fact, you can see that what I did on the front is happening on the back. Remember that this is mirroring us around the origin, so we can see the red X-axis and the blue Z-axis. If I were to not be working around the origin, my symmetry would not be symmetrical on a shape, but rather around the origin. I can also decide that I don't want the shape to move along in a particular axis. So if I didn't want it to move side to side, I would lock the X-axis, and anything I did that would normally impact the X-axis, like say dragging sideways, you can see no longer has any impact. and I can lock more than one axis at once if I want to, so I can only work along the Z-axis right now because I've locked X and Y. That is a quick tour of sculpting options in just about exactly 5 minutes.